All right, I'm going to, it's 7:03. I'm going to call to order the October 29th, 2024 Planning Board meeting. I'm going to take a roll call vote. Kevin York,
Here.
Theo Knoll,
Here.
and myself, Matthew Lowry. Jim cannot be here tonight, and Bill is not on yet, but we do have 3 members, so that would be a quorum. First item is approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at the October 8th, 2024 meeting minutes?
Mhm.
All right. Any comments or questions on those revisions?
No.
Nope.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
All
of
right.
October 8th.
Second.
Motion by Theo and second by Kevin. Roll call votes. Kevin,
Yes.
Theo,
Yes.
and myself, yes. All right. So the 40A subcommittee has also called this as a meeting. Chair of the subcommittee, Mike McLean, would you like to start your meeting and have a roll call vote also?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to try to enable the camera here. I'm not sure why I'm having trouble with the camera, but we won't worry about that. I'm sorry, Matt. We're having a meeting within your meeting. Is that what you said?
Well, yeah, I think you posted this as a meeting. So do you want to officially have
Sure.
a meeting? And, okay.
I will open our meeting at approximately 7:06 p.m. By roll call vote. Councilor Dombrowski.
Here.
Councilor Vincent.
Here.
And I am present, so that is our full subcommittee of 3, Matthew. So our meeting is open, and I think the next order of business, I believe, would be a presentation. I think that our senior planner, Samantha Elliott, and the town administrator are going to take the lead on that.
All right. I think before we do that, just a little explanation. Originally, we had posted this as a public meeting, but due to a scheduling conflict, it was not able to be posted properly with enough time. So we're gonna have to set another public hearing date. And Sam, have you obviously you're gonna need to post this within the required time frame. So it's going to have to be at least 2 weeks and a day from tonight, correct?
Yes, and to not have a schedule conflict, it looks like it would be November 14th at 7 p.m. Sticking to your standard 7 p.m. time.
All right, that would be Thursday.
Thursday, correct? Yes, sorry.
Okay. Is it so on the Wednesday the 13th is not possible, is it?
No, I don't believe that was there was another meeting that was potentially going to be scheduled that date, and so that's what I had last talked to Jim about when I had spoken with him on the phone.
Okay. What that does is it would only give us one meeting we could have, right? We would not have enough time to schedule a second meeting.
Correct. Yeah. And I can, as I had mentioned to Jim, I can make a presentation. You're more than welcome to take public comment. It's just not the formal public hearing.
Okay. All right, then let's set the public hearing date for November 14th at 7:05. All right,
And Matt, just a scheduling point, maybe when we get to items not anticipated, we'll discuss whether or not to have our meeting on the 12th.
okay. So since this was originally supposed to be a public hearing with the planning board and it's not, having a presentation, I think is okay, but I don't want to give the illusion that this is somehow a public hearing for the planning board. This is going to be a presentation by the 40A subcommittee. So I feel it would be best if planning board members kind of refrain from asking questions of especially the public. And I would almost sort of refrain from asking from the committee at this point and let them do their presentation and not have any confusion that this is somehow a public meeting that was not properly posted. Do any of the other planning board members have any thoughts on that?
Matt, if I may, one thing to clarify, it was noticed as a public meeting. It just was not noticed as the formal public hearing, which requires the publication 14 days prior. It was noticed properly, just like all other meetings with the clerk and whatnot.
Okay, but one of the requirements for any zoning issues that we have a public hearing. And I do not want to get caught up in semantics of
Sure.
someone thinking this was the public hearing and they made a statement tonight that was not made at our public hearing and having any confusion. So I think to kind of follow the letter of the law, I think that would be the best practice. So,
Matt, this is Mike. I think Steve Mayo has his hand up if,
Yep.
I'm not
All
sure
right.
if you can see him.
yep, Steve,
Yes, I just wanted to make sure, Mr. Chairman, that you guys actually take a vote to set that public hearing date. You didn't yet.
okay, I don't know, if we need to have a vote for that, but we can do that. So, let's take a roll call vote to set the public hearing date for the MBTA 40A multifamily zoning overlay district for November 14th, 2024 at 7:05. Theo, no?
Do you need a motion?
Yes, let's have a
Okay,
motion.
sure. Matt, I'd make a motion that we set a public hearing date to discuss for the public hearing on the proposed MBTA Communities Overlay District for Thursday, November 14th at 7:05.
And I will second that.
All right, let's take a roll call vote. Kevin,
Yes.
Theo,
Yes,
and myself, yes. All right. So, gonna move on to the planning board agenda item number 4, the MBTA 40 multifamily district presentation. So I'm gonna pass it over to the 48 subcommittee chairman, Mike McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Lowry. I will now pass this over to Samantha Elliott, Senior Planner, and Town Administrator Steve Mayo to conduct the lion's share of this presentation. Of course, the 3 members from the Town Council are also here as needed.
And I'm ready to have Sam jump right in.
Just hot potato. Okay, so welcome everyone. The MBTA presentation that I'm going to be doing for MBTA communities is going to go over the proposed districts and a little bit of the history of the process. So pop that. Okay, so the proposed districts, how did we get here? The subcommittee collaborated with the public through public meetings, a survey this summer that had 852 responses, both online and hard copy. There were public forums held in July and September. And through those public engagement events, the subcommittee gained guidance on a new map with new locations, got some feedback on whether off-site is desired, so an area outside of proximity to one of the train stations, and then whether there was support for character areas. And I'll get into the specifics of all of these a little later. So under MBTA communities, Wakefield is required, like all 177 communities within the MBTA communities regulation, that we have to comply by creating a district or districts that meet the minimums that are set forth by the state. Our minimums were 36 acres, 1,696 units, a minimum density of 15 units per acre, and 75% of our district or districts needs to be within half a mile of the stations, which are in our area, Wakefield Station, which is off North Ave by Albion, and then Greenwood, which is in the kind of Greenwood downtown, just slightly north of it. And then also Melrose Highlands was the 3 different station areas that we need to be within. So the subcommittee looked at all of the different feedback and came up with this plan that has different character areas, which allows us to meet existing development standards while also meeting the intent of MBTA communities that fits in with the existing development patterns of Wakefield. So the 4 main character areas we have is the industrial loft character area, which is off of Foundry. The high-rise residential character area, which is off Audubon, the neighborhood commercial character area, which is Albion and Greenwood, and then the North Ave mandatory mixed-use character area, which is the North Ave mixed-use area. There's I think 2 different names on here, my apologies. So a little bit more about what a character area is. They are a geographical area that has designated development patterns and criteria. So for example, downtown, you have a character area where it's a neighborhood commercial off of Main Street. And if you go to the surrounding, just off of any of the side streets, you have more residential, whether it's single family, mixed use, or apartments. But that is, you would have a residential character area in those side streets, and then you'd have that commercial character area in the middle. So the goal of the MBTA subcommittee was to try to reflect the existing development, because that's what the feedback was from a lot of the forums, as well as the surveys, is to try to keep these higher density projects where there's already higher density development, and try to keep it out of the single family and residential areas. So again, the first district is the industrial loft character area. It is off of Foundry on this map here. It's the orange area that's outlined. It is currently has 458 units, which does not include the about 60 units that are being developed in this area that are currently under construction. It would allow for residential or mixed use under the MBTA zoning overlay. And the building height maximum would be 5 stories or 57 feet. Have a 10-foot front and side setback, and rear 15-foot lot coverage is 60%, so less than what some of the other developments are in the area, with a 15-foot maximum square foot per footprint per building. So you wouldn't have anything that's big and massing. You would have potentially multiple buildings, or have it broken up on the site in different ways. Parking requirements are consistent with other developments in the area, which is 1.5 spaces per unit. And this shows the existing development. This is a map from a website called Residensity that's done. It's a public website you can access. It shows the darker units, or the darker parcels, are higher density, and the lighter parcels are lower density. Anything that is gray on here is just a non-residential use. So there's already existing residential, and this allows us to capture the existing developments that have already happened in this area that are already transit oriented by being in close proximity to the train, in keeping with the spirit of MBTA communities. So this is existing developments in the industrial off character area, and similar to what you would see under MBTA communities. Now, just as a side note, the Grayson Lofts one is, as many know, and you can see here, 6 stories tall. It would not be permitted to be built by right under MBTA communities because the maximum height is 5 stories. So the next district is the high-rise residential district. It's located up off of Audubon. This was the site that was selected through the survey and public forum process for the offsite location. So the way MBTA communities works, in some municipalities, you're allowed to have a certain percentage outside of those half-mile boundaries that are around the train stations, and we're allowed 25%. So we were able to set some parcels or some units on this particular lot, which is currently Colonial Point. It's a 176 unit apartment building, and under MBTA communities, it would maintain that residential use. It would have a lower height maximum. So what's there currently is 12 stories. Under MBTA communities, it would be 10 stories maximum, with a 20-foot front setback and 30-foot side setbacks. And as well as a 30-foot rear setback. The building lot coverage would be a 30% maximum, with no more than 20,000 square feet per building footprint, with again the 1.5 spaces per unit. And this particular site, I have reached out to Conservation Commission. I answered a number of their different questions. Really the eastern half, kind of the east, a little bit northeast, southeast, where the wetlands is within this existing map. That area would all be excluded. So under MBTA communities, there's different layers, and there's a Zone A requirement that requires a larger setback for property, so that there's very minimal impact on wetlands and watershed, hydrology, that's what all the different layers are called, and allows for any structure, any new development would have it would allow for a better buffer from the wetlands to the built environment. So I've answered most of the questions at Conservation Commission, which that was their main concern, was what the setback would be. And I have in office a map that shows the excluded area if anybody does have any questions about that in the future. So this is the existing development. It could potentially look similar, but again, it would be 2 stories lower than what exists there currently, and could go up to 418 units, provided they can meet all of the parking requirement for that on site. The next proposed district is the North Avenue Mixed Use District. This particular area extends from Church Street all the way down to the middle school along the eastern side of North Ave, and then directly around the commuter rail station between Tuttle and North Ave. So this particular area would require mixed use. So the first floor would be required to be a online commercial use, and then the second and third floor would be a residential use. Again, this site would have 3 stories, a 40-foot maximum. In keeping with existing development patterns, it would have a 0 front setback, 0 side setback, and a 15-foot rear setback. Now, if it abuts residential, that rear setback would have an additional 10 feet added to it. So it would be a 25-foot rear setback to maintain that buffer. The lot coverage here is 50% is the maximum lot coverage. The building footprint maximum per building is 10,000 square feet. So you likely wouldn't see something as large as the Tono building, not to mention, obviously, that one is also much taller than what would be allowed by right under MBTA communities. And this would have a 0 parking requirement for the first floor commercial, consistent with the existing area, and then 1.5 for the residential on the second and third floor. and that already has some existing residential, which you can see here, but there's a lot more potential capacity in this particular area because most of this is currently underdeveloped and underutilized area and is just a single story commercial space. So this would maintain that single story commercial character of the area, kind of servicing the surrounding community, and allow for some residential to be added on top. So the kind of an example of what would be there is this existing development that is on Main Street. These are multiple story buildings, whether it's a 2 or a 3-story building. They wouldn't necessarily, a potential developer wouldn't have to build up to 3 stories. They could do 2. But it kind of shows just the existing previous area. And here's what it looked like historically. This particular area on Main Street had a number of different multi-story buildings. So it's in keeping with the historic development patterns as well as the area. So the next district would be on Albion. It is the neighborhood commercial character area. This would allow for residential or mixed-use buildings by right. The building height for a residential building, meaning no commercial space at all, would just be 2 stories. If there's a commercial component, it goes up to 3 stories. Setbacks would be in keeping with the existing setbacks of the area for commercial structures, which is a 0 front and a 0 side setback with a 15-foot rear setback, again requiring an additional 10-foot buffer if there is residential abutting that rear property line. The lot coverage would be a 50% maximum. Building footprint would be 10,000 square foot maximum per building on the site. Most of these are smaller parcels, so you likely wouldn't see any of the large massing structures that would require something like that, but it is trying to stay in keeping with the existing massing of these buildings. The parking requirements would be very similar to what's on proposed for the North Ave mixed-use district, which is 0 for the commercial, again consistent with this particular commercial area on Albion and Main Street for what's there currently. And then 1.5 spaces per unit for the residential. So if there's 2 stories that are developed as all residential, all of that would need to have that 1.5 spaces per unit. And then if it were mixed use, you would have the 0 for the first floor. And then again, the second and third would have 1.5 spaces per unit. So there's already some existing residential in this area. It actually exceeds what MBTA community said could be done by right under theirs. And this has to do somewhat with the lot sizes in this area, because these are a number of smaller lot sizes and then what could be built by right with a lower height. The property at the corner of Foster and Richardson, which is in the southeast corner of this map, it's a dark colored parcel. That is a 4.5 story. It has like a garden. The property kind of grading is different. So it's about a 4.5 story building that is all residential right now. And that would potentially not be allowed by right under MBTA communities. Under the underlying zoning, it may be allowed by special permit, but under MBTA communities, you would see structures on a smaller scale, again, consistent with the previous photo that I showed of Main Street, where there's primarily 2- and 3-story buildings. The next proposed district is also neighborhood commercial character area. It's in Greenwood and extends kind of radiating out from the Greenwood Street, Oak Street, Main Street intersection right there. It captures some of the existing multifamily developments in the area and also leaves the option for mixed use. There is already a mixed use structure at the northwest corner of Greenwood Street and Main Street. So there is already existing development like this in the area. Again, it would allow for the 2 stories of residential by right or 3 stories if somebody is doing mixed use. The side setbacks, or the front and side setbacks would be consistent with existing commercial development, which is the 0. The rear would be 15, again, having that additional 10 foot, so it would go up to 25 foot if it's abutting residential to provide a ample buffer. The lot coverage would be maximum 50%. Building footprint per building would be 10,000 square foot maximum. Parking requirements would be consistent with the North Avenue mixed use. And again, the same ones that were up on Albion, where the first floor commercial has a 0 requirement, and then there's 1.5 spaces per residential unit. Now, this particular area has some existing multifamily developments, which you can see in this map right here. Those are the ones that are showing up colored. Everything else gray is commercial or just a some sort of non-residential use. Under MBTA communities, the absolute maximum that could be built is 323 units. Now, again, whether or not that gets built really depends on I mean, it would require everything to be, kind of demolished. And again, none of that's being mandated, but every single parcel has to be able to meet their parking requirements on site. There aren't discretionary applications that go with this process. It has to be what can be done by right. So if somebody could build 10 units, but they can't meet the parking, then they need to find a way to reduce those units so that they can, or reduce the building footprint so that they can meet things on site. This area has 89 units currently, and under MBTA communities could see up to 323 units, provided anybody can meet, again, the existing requirements or the proposed requirements under MBTA communities on site. And so here's an example of some of the neighborhood commercial kind of character areas. So you could see a mixed use structure like the one on the left, where there's some sort of commercial or non-residential use on the first floor. And then the second and third floors are residential uses. That particular one is 184 Water. The older postcard on the older photograph postcard on the right is on Albion Street. You can see that the Wakefield item used to have all glass storefronts facing, I think that's Foster and Albion, allowing for engagement. That's one of the goals of including MBTA or including mixed use in these neighborhood commercial character areas, is to have that first floor space online and allow the public and the pedestrian to engage in that, as well as providing neighborhood services. So under MBTA communities, there would, as this proposed district, there would be a maximum of 1,722 units compared to the existing, which is 876, and that does not include structures that are under construction. And it would encompass 54.4 acres, and this is just 1.5% more than our minimum requirements. So we're really tight to those numbers, which was one of the things that the public had requested through public forums and the survey. So the last it's almost 10 years since the inclusionary zoning component has been added to our code, which can be found in Chapter 190, Section 32F. 6. It talks about getting a special permit and allowing for these additional uses, so or additional units that are affordable. Now, MBTA communities has a 10% affordability written into it as a part of the proposed district, but we have created 419 of the 1,320 new units that have been built. And MBTA communities is trying to capture a lot of that within the district boundaries to kind of reflect that existing development patterns. Our current affordable housing, just in case anybody wants to know, we are currently at 9.13 on our subsidized housing inventory list. And we have been steadily working to increase the affordable units in Wakefield since well, really over subsequent years, especially since the inclusionary zoning component has been added. So if there is not compliance, what would that mean for MBTA communities? It risks current and future grant funding. Over the last 3 years, Wakefield has received $3.7 million in grants. We've also received money from the TIP fund, and I need to double check what those numbers are. The future impact would be $2 to $4 million per project, as those are now one of the components of the review. Each grant you get points for, ranking your application as part of the review process. For TIP funds, it will be a factor. It's not the sole factor. It's not a minimum requirement, but it will be adding or subtracting from our application, should that happen. And then also there's the potential of the town getting sued by the Attorney General's office. There's the cost of legal action, and we could still end up being forced to comply and may or may not have any additional say over what the district is. The grants list is ever expanding. This is the most current one as of October 10th. There are more and more things that are getting added to it. MBTA communities is also a factor, like I mentioned, with the Transportation Improvement Program, which is the TIP. It's a factor when they're evaluating each application. So we are trying to stay on top of what grants are being impacted. There's also a new grant. It is called the MBTA Communities Catalyst Fund. There's a whole host of different projects that it can be utilized for, but it is money that is only available to communities that have an approved MBTA communities compliant district. And right now, the Department of Education for the state, there's impacts on the grants, a number of them, and that again is one of the components or one of the grants that keeps having more added to it, one of the categories, apologies. And the language is right here. They are contingent upon the grantee being able to certify that it will comply with MBTA communities or is in compliance. So if we're out of compliance, there are potential grants for the school districts that could be impacted as well. So right now, again, we've received $3.7 million over the last 3 years. Some of the biggest grants that were impacted or could be impacted would be the Mass Works grant, which did North Avenue water main improvements for $2 million, the Housing Choice grant, which is for the housing production plan, which is $79,000, and then a Housing Works grant, which was Hopkins Street sidewalk extension, which was $571,913. And I'm working on trying to figure out what exactly that TIP fund amount is so that I can make sure you have that information as well. And I'm happy to answer any other questions if anybody has any that they want to ask.
Samantha, this is Mike McLean. If we don't have any questions, I was wondering whether Town Administrator Mayo wanted to address. Do we have any hands up? I really, let me scroll through here and see. Not seeing any hands up. I was wondering whether the Town Administrator Mayo wanted to address some of the questions that the Planning Board had asked of the Town Council.
Yes, you read my mind, Mike. Thank you. The beginning of the month, the planning board did send a letter asking some questions regarding MBTA and you know, the issues if there were non-compliance and some other questions in there. Let me answer them as best I can. Samantha was completely correct. The list of grants that are subject to, I guess, inability to get if we are not compliant seems to be changing almost on a daily basis. The latest ones that we've really looked at are the DESI ones. And for me, that was quite a surprise. I mean, these are grants that the school department applies for. Maybe you can flip to that slide, Samantha, to show that back up there. These are for the emotional well-being of students, and that back one you had it a second ago. So grant awards are contingent upon the grantee being able to certify that it will comply with the Massachusetts general laws, including 40A. I think it's really very crazy myself that anybody could sign that. I can certainly sign that we are in compliance, but to certify that we will comply, to me, doesn't, someone could file something at a later town meeting, or city council can make a motion. So I don't even like the wording on that, but it does show you where the state is going. We talked a little bit about TIP projects. That's kind of a new area that the state is looking at. And these are things that we've seen and we're hearing. I haven't seen language like this that's in this DESI area, but remember the TIP program of a big, roadway, sidewalk improvement projects. And a lot of it is federal funds, but usually 20% of it is state funds. So what the state is telling us in some of these seminars that we've been to is that 20% of the grant amounts that are state funded will be subject to inability to get due to non-compliance. Also, they have said that there are points that if you're not in compliance, you won't be scoring as high. And these grants are very close. So they're throwing the number around about 5 points being lost on your application or in your grading. And it's really 2 or 3 points that separate us. So that kind of concerns me. They're also looking at all these other grants, and we get a lot of grants through the portal, the online portal, the one-stop portal. They're looking at all of those as well. So I don't want to be an alarmist or anything, but there are more grants that are coming down the road that they are adding to this list. And that is unfortunate. So I can't give you, I'm looking at the grants we've got in the last few years, through 2000, going back 5 years, and that's well over 4 million. We have another one in the pipeline for another million on top of that. So it's not, there are things that will be looked at here, as we know today. So that is of a concern. The other questions that I was asked was, what about legal fees? Well, if we were sued, if we would have to fight, we would fight that, how we pay for legal fees. Well, it is the town council that will determine upon who they hire to represent them. I, for one, would be very comfortable with town council Mullen, who is under salary for the town representing us. That would be a decision of town council. I do know that number from Milton is out there, what Milton was expending. But Milton is, this is a case of first impression when Milton went out for outside counsel. I personally very comfortable with Tom Mullen. I'm not going to say that it would cost us nothing, because we might have to move something else out that Tom might have been handling because of this, but I certainly wouldn't, I would not dismiss personally the use of town of Councilor Mullen. And if I were asked for recommendation from the town council, I would certainly say that Tom could do the job for us. So I'm not really worried about those fees there. I think another question I was asked is the what would happen with our bond rating? And years ago, all the bond surveillance groups cared about was what your financials were. It was basically just running through our balance sheet and trends and things like that. I will say over the last few years, they have started asking questions regarding what's going on in the town. For instance, a couple of years ago, they were very interested in green energy and the bylaws that we passed for the stretch code and the stretcher code, as we call it. So that to me is something they have been interested in, those kind of socioeconomic issues. They did ask about the MBTA compliance during our last meeting. They do, check to see what they're doing. A lot of their analysts are local, so they know that that the first round did not pass in the spring. We did say we were coming back, and I told them we were in compliance as of that date. It was the end of August, early September when we met, where we were in compliance. And but it is part of their rubric. How much it means, I don't know. Our financials are still very good. They tend not to tell you exactly what the issues are, but it is part of their rubric. I don't think that it is I don't think it is dispositive, but it is things that they're looking at. So sorry to be wishy-washy on that answer, but that's been my experience with them. And I think those were the items that the planning board was interested in. I would note that you know, a lot of these areas are within the zoning change that we made in 2015. The inclusionary zoning area requiring 18% of affordable housing, and I think we've done really well with that program and have really increased our housing stock and our affordable housing stock that I'm very happy with. And I do like the word that Samantha uses. This helps us kind of capture some of those units that we have, you know, created an atmosphere that could be built in within this, within these new character areas. So I think we tried to capture those, keep the character of the areas, and have an affordability component going forward. So I'm happy to answer any other questions, but I did want to answer the questions asked of the planning board before. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. If we see any hands raised, I'll let you know. I'm just scrolling through and looking at the participant list and not seeing anything at the moment. Any comments by the other members of the subcommittee, Councilor Dombrowski or Councilor Vincent? Councilor Dombrowski, are you off mute?
I am. So I would just say that I think there was a lot of thought put into how to spread this across town in a way that hadn't been done before. And I do really credit the attempt to try to keep the balance of the first floor retail space or commercial space with housing above. I think that was one of the nicer components to this, and something that I think we're all looking to achieve if possible. But I think most significantly, the subcommittee heard the town loud and clear at town meeting and subsequent to it, and was really guided by the surveys, which the town really participated in, I think, in a rather meaningful way. And I think we really took that feedback to heart in looking at this in a way that was going to be the best way to address compliance potentially, understanding that there are a lot of people, myself included, that don't think that this one size fits all approach to zoning is appropriate. And I think that this proposal reflects a lot of thought and compromise, and most importantly, is a reflection of the significant feedback that we've received from the community relative to the concerns people have. Not everyone will love this. There will be people who will be looking for other opportunities to have expanded this. Others will be just adamantly opposed to it because they don't want us to be compliant. So we're presenting this as an option for the town to deliberate on and then ultimately make a decision with. You know, this is, I think, not having a proposal at all left us with a bit of a vacuum at town meeting. And so this is an opportunity to have voters select an option that we think is the least impactful to the neighborhoods and the character of our community, while still being within compliance. And if the community chooses to support this, then I think this is probably the best compromise that we would be able to achieve. And if not, then then we'll just have to take things from there.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Vincent, did you have any comment?
Thank you, Chair McLean. Yeah, I'm looking at this from my phone because I'm tending to a sick family member. Sam, I don't know if because I wasn't able to see the whole presentation. Did you talk about the affordability piece on this current plan? The 10% piece and why we have to keep it at 10 as opposed to the 18 that we have in the inclusionary zoning because we didn't have time to do the economic feasibility study. Was that in these slides, the affordability piece?
Yes and no. I didn't go into all of the detail about not having enough time, not having the capacity to be able to do the economic feasibility study as required by EOHLC to increase it over 10%. But I did note that we are able to include that 10% as part of this project.
And I think on the slide that you have up there right now, I think what's really telling, and I echo what Councilor Dombrowski said, that this is a one-size-fit-all approach by the state and didn't take into consideration what efforts individual municipalities had done to increase their housing inventory, especially the affordability piece. And when you look at the numbers there of the affordable housing and how we're at 9.13% with an overall inventory of 1,028, when you look back at those earlier numbers, 2 years ago, we were only at 7%. And so we've gone from 7 to 9% just in the last couple of years. The vast majority of that due to the zoning bylaw change with the inclusionary zoning back in 2015. So this plan that we're proposing augments the efforts that, in my opinion, that Wakefield has undergone since that inclusionary zoning change was made in 2015, because it has an affordability piece. And it will help us in our quest to get to 10%. And this is the first time in Wakefield history that we went over 9%. We just got the results or the latest update from EOHLC last week. And I think that's a very, very important piece to explain to the Wakefield residents that we've made considerable strides in getting to 10% and increasing our overall housing inventory. And this plan will help augment us to get to 10%, when then, of course, we have much more control over our housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I would just add to this, and I apologize for the camera. I'm not sure what's going on tonight, but I wanted everybody to see my really cool Roy Orbison sunglasses that I got by having my cataract surgery today. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to go without the camera. I just wanted to add that for those who don't know, and many do, we were on a short time frame. Nonetheless, we received 852 surveys in the middle of the summer. So this obviously is a very, an issue that people are very interested in. I don't know if we've ever gotten 852 surveys on any of our other survey requests, including the master plan. We, and also just for those who don't know, we did have public participation at every meeting that we had. We had meetings every couple of weeks, and we had 2 public forums where we had further significant public participation. We're going to be doing much more. The town administrator could mention, but we are going to be doing significant publication in the item. We're going to be doing postcards to all properties involved in this situation. So, we really have done the outreach as much as we could in the time allotted. I have heard statements that we're trying to sell this plan. I simply want to say, for the purpose of the public, that none of the 3 members of this subcommittee are trying to sell anybody anything. We've done our best to come up with a compromise plan, which I mentioned at our meeting is, that's what compromise is. It's a mutually disagreeable solution. And hopefully it is. We did on the surveys have about 57% of those responding indicating that they were interested in some kind of a compromise. Going back to the previous session of the working group, it was often stated that if we had a failure in the spring town meeting, we would be back at the fall town meeting. This subcommittee is simply putting forward a compromise plan. We're trying to base it on fact, has nothing to do with fear mongering. If we find language in a DESI grant that says you must be in compliance, we're going to bring it to people's attention. I think it is clear to all of us that the list of the Commonwealth, and I'm not in favor of the Commonwealth, I think they're overreaching, but their list of penal in nature, grants that they're applying this to does seem to be expanding. It's factual. It has nothing to do with trying to raise fear. We're going to bring this hopefully to the town meeting and place it before the public. And all three members of this subcommittee have indicated that it is the legislative body, the town meeting, that makes this ultimate decision. But we believe we've done the best we could do in terms of trying to balance the needs and the desires of the public as have been provided to us. That's all I would have at present. Did you have anything further, Town Administrator Mayo?
Sure. Thank you, Mike. I want to let you know that the bylaw will be the warrant will be posted in the town meeting. Town meeting warrant will be posted in the item. It will include the map of the area. It will include the addresses of the affected properties, as Chair McLean said, based on some information and comments from people at our public forums. Each property owner will receive a postcard, alerting them that there is a zoning bylaw in effect, and with the QR code on it, or directing them to call us, or get the information on our website. We're going to have a list of events. A lot of some coffees. Sam and I will be doing 3 coffees in the near future. There will be another info session of this group on November 7th at the Public Safety Building. Coffee hours will be November 8th at the Civic Center, November 14th at 10 o'clock in the Town Hall, first floor conference room, November 15th at the Senior Center. So our doors will always be open. There is going to be a great packet that can be picked up or received on the website that will really break down each of those character areas. So you won't have to strain your old eyes like I do necessarily on a big map, but you'll be able to look at some of these other, be able to look at these areas a little bit easier. So we are trying to get as much as we can out in front of the public. We listen to the public from the first meetings, and I think the subcommittee has come up with a plan that tried to take all of those comments into effect. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Steve. I think that, unless I'm missing something, we've concluded our presentation. Is it, Matt, is it time to kick it back over to you?
Yeah, if you are done with your presentation, I guess at this point you could close your meeting, and the planning board would go on with our remaining business.
Sure. By roll call vote, I'll ask the subcommittee members to close this meeting of the subcommittee at about 7:56 p.m. Councilor Dombrowski,
Aye.
Councilor Vincent,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So Matt, we turn it back over to you when we close this portion of our meeting at 7:56 p.m. Thank you very much for having us.
All right, thank you. All right, we only have a few more item agendas. Actually, the next one is item 5, items not anticipated by the chair. And I think Theo already mentioned, we now have a scheduled meeting for the 14th. We previously had one scheduled for the 12th. I don't know, and maybe Sam, you can say, is there anything already anticipated to be at that meeting on our agenda? I don't know if we had postponed any other items or continued public hearings.
No, I think the only thing that could be impacting, and I think that the project on Salem Street at 150, I think it's 154, Brian McGurl's project, it would be, he had requested that it be continued until they could be heard by ZBA and the Conservation Commission. So I think that that one is postponed until later in November.
The 26th.
Thank you.
All right. So that's on to the 26th of November. Okay. And I believe that's the only one that we really have ongoing at this point. So, Theo, are you thinking that we should just cancel our meeting for the 12th and only have the one on the 14th? That's what it's looking like right now.
Only, yeah, unless there is other business, but yeah, no, I think there's really no point to have our meeting on the 12th.
Well, we'll just set the meeting to the 14th.
Okay.
I have a scheduling conflict. I'm going to see if I can work around that.
Mhm.
I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know the other two members that aren't here, if they
Right.
can make it. So I will query them later and just see to make sure we have a quorum. Theo and Kevin, are you available on the 14th, that Thursday night?
Certainly.
Theo, are you available?
I am.
You are, okay, and Kevin?
Yes.
All right. All right, I will work on trying to reschedule what I have, and I will talk with Bill and Jim and make sure they're available, so. And that will be for the public hearing. All right, any other planning board members have any items not anticipated at this point?
No, I would just like to express my appreciation to Sam for and Administrator Mayo for the presentation, and all of town staff for getting us to this point. So.
All right. Sounds good. Moving on to item 6, adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn our meeting?
Motion to adjourn the October 29th planning board meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All right. And roll call vote, Theo Noel,
Yes.
Kevin York,
Yes.
and myself, yes. All right, so the October, what day is today, 30th planning board meeting is adjourned. And we will see you on November 14th, hopefully. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.